My parents force me to give my money to my sister for her business, but when she sends me photos of her grand opening to mock me, I do something terrible that leaves her with nothing. I'm 17 years old, and a few months ago, I was forced to give the inheritance I received from my grandmother to my older sister Connie to fund her business dreams. Connie is 6 years older than me and has always bullied me. It feels like she holds a grudge against me for no apparent reason. Honestly, she intimidates me simply because she can. She knows she can always get her way. Since childhood, my parents told me not to make a big deal out of things. Whenever I complained about Connie's behavior, they would say I was too sensitive. Now I realize my parents manipulated me into thinking her behavior was normal for older siblings and that I had no right to be upset. But let me assure you, Connie was much worse than other older siblings. She wasn't just teasing. What she did was far from harmless. When we were little, she always tried to humiliate me with cruel words. My parents told me to ignore it, but they never said anything to her, even when she made me cry. That was bad enough, but at least it was just verbal abuse. The real turning point came when I was 13, and I realized she didn't just dislike me, she truly hated me. One summer, my family went to the beach, and Connie brought along a couple of her friends. She was 19 at the time and had come home from college for the weekend. She and her friends spent all their time together. For some reason, her friends seemed to hate me as much as she did. Maybe they all shared some twisted mindset that made them despise someone who had done nothing to them. They constantly insulted me, made snide remarks, and laughed whenever I was around. I got tired of it and decided to sit alone on the dock, dangling my feet over the water. Suddenly, someone put a plastic bag over my head and pushed me into the water. It took me a few seconds to realize what was happening. When I came to my senses, I saw my sister and her friends running away, laughing as I flailed in the water. Luckily, I can swim well. I quickly pulled the bag off my head and swam back to the shore as fast as I could. It was the most traumatic thing I had ever experienced. When I got back to my parents and started crying about what had happened, my sister and her friends brushed it off as a harmless joke. The worst part was my parents. They laughed with them and told me I was overreacting as usual because I'd always been a crybaby. My dad even joked that at least those swimming lessons had finally paid off. That plastic bag was small enough that I could have suffocated. I could have drowned. So many things could have gone wrong, yet they all thought it was hilarious. That was the moment I realized my parents had a favorite child, and it wasn't me. Since then, I've made it my goal to study hard, get into a good university, and leave these people behind. I couldn't see them as my family anymore. I've kept my distance from Connie as much as possible, but unfortunately I still live with my parents, so I've had to pretend to be nice to them. That's also why I ended up giving away the inheritance money I didn't want to part with. My grandmother passed away about a year ago, and 3 months ago we received her inheritance. She left her house and most of her money to my parents. Connie and I each received $5,000, and my grandmother also left me a sapphire ring. She had once joked that I could have it someday because I told her I loved it. It was a sizable amount of money, and I planned to save it for my future. But then, my parents told me Connie was starting her own business and needed to gather all the funds she could. They were already helping her, and now they expected me to do the same. It didn't seem fair. Why should I contribute to her business, especially considering how she had treated me my entire life? I refused. But after a couple of days of arguing, my dad told me that if I didn't help, he wouldn't pay for my college tuition or even let me return home once I left for school. That scared me. I was already overwhelmed with frustration and stress from my upcoming final exams and needed peace and quiet to study. So, reluctantly, I agreed. It probably wasn't the smartest decision, but I felt too pressured to keep fighting. I gave up the inheritance money just to end the argument. At least they let me keep the sapphire ring, probably because they didn't realize it was real. My grandmother had only described it in her will as the ring with the blue stone, so they didn't know its true value. Thankfully, I was smart enough to keep quiet about that. Giving up the $5,000 felt like a loss, but at least the fight was over. Now, 3 months later, I've been accepted to the university of my choice. I'll be starting in a few weeks. My parents are keeping their promise to cover all my expenses, including tuition and the costs of living out of state. So, I guess giving up the money wasn't such a terrible trade-off, especially since I no longer have to worry about finances in college. Everything was going well. Technically, it still is. But a few days ago, I did something that left me feeling guilty. My sister had a grand opening party for her store, which she's finally managed to launch. She's working with the same university friends who once pushed me into the ocean with a plastic bag on my head and laughed about it. Now, the three of them own a large store selling shoes and accessories. It's nothing extraordinary, but they think they've done something revolutionary. Their loyal followers seem to agree, so they'll definitely get customers. I knew there was a chance my sister might enjoy some success, but after she sent me those photos from her launch party yesterday flaunting her achievements, I couldn't hold back. She wanted me to live through the pictures, reminding me how much she had accomplished. Then, to rub salt in the wound, she added, "I couldn't have done it without your help," referring to the $5,000 I was forced to give her. For some reason, that comment infuriated me. While scrolling through the photos, I noticed someone in the background. Curious, I checked my photo gallery to confirm my suspicion. Though the man in the photos had grown a beard and gained some weight, I could still recognize him. It was Connie's ex-boyfriend from high school. This guy, let's call him Simon, started dating Connie right after she turned 18, even though he was 25 at the time. He had gone to the same school as us, but graduated long before her. They connected online when she was 16, and literally on her 18th birthday, he asked her out. I always thought it was creepy, but Connie found it romantic. For once, our parents acted like normal, reasonable people and told her they didn't approve of her dating someone in his mid-20s who had clearly been waiting for her to come of age. But Connie ignored them and continued seeing him in secret. At the time, Simon worked for his father's company, but after only about 8 months, they had to break up because Simon got caught stealing from his father's business. His father sent him to live with an uncle in Wyoming to work on a farm as punishment. Connie was devastated, and that's when our parents found out she had still been seeing him. He even returned home to beg my dad for help finding a job locally so he wouldn't have to move to Wyoming and could stay with Connie. Of course, my dad refused, and he and my mom forced Connie to block Simon on every platform and promise never to contact him again. That day was chaos in our house. Connie cried and begged our parents not to make her break up with him, promising he would change. My dad yelled at her for disobeying them and for getting involved with someone who was clearly bad news. Meanwhile, my mom just kept sobbing. I wasn't directly involved in the drama. They told me to stay in my room, but I heard Simon's name mentioned enough times to remember it. I even looked him up on social media out of curiosity. When someone causes that much turmoil in your home, you don't easily forget their face. So when I recognized his figure in the background of her photos, I immediately decided to take action against Connie. Connie, because my parents didn't really consider me part of the family, had always been very open about discussing business in front of me. I knew that while my parents didn't need much persuasion, the parents of her friends had been harder to convince. They were mainly persuading their parents to invest in the business because finding other investors would be difficult, given that everyone involved seemed so naive and incompetent. Regardless, I was certain about one thing. The last person doubting this business plan was her mother. She was a single mom and skeptical about risking so much money on a store solely dedicated to shoes and accessories. She wanted her daughter to find a job, work for a few years, gain experience, and then come back to this idea to avoid turning it into a bad investment. But Connie and her friends were determined to make it work. Connie had complained a lot about this woman while at home. Eventually, they decided to move forward with the money they had for now. Later, if the business started to take off, the mother of their third friend would also invest. That was the deal they'd agreed upon, and for that to happen, the first few months of the business needed to be a big success. At the moment, they only had enough capital to last for a few months. After that, they definitely need a second round of investment unless, by some miracle, they made enough profit to sustain themselves. But realistically, it was unlikely that such a small business would break even so quickly, especially in the competitive fashion market. I knew that the one remaining skeptical mother just needed an excuse to back out of the deal, and I also knew that this secret could provide that excuse. So I contacted her through a fake account and asked her to call me because I had something important to share about her daughter's business. At first, she hesitated, probably unsure if I was legitimate or not. But curiosity got the better of her, and she eventually called. I told her everything I had seen and who the guy in the background of those photos really was. Initially, she didn't believe me, but I managed to convince her. I told her my job was just to warn her, and after that it was entirely up to her whether she still wanted to invest in the business or not. I hung up and, on my own, sent her a couple of photos of Connie and Simon from the past. Then, I let her make her decision. I guess she decided to back out and also told her daughter to do the same. From the day after I made that phone call, things have been intense. No one has any idea that I was behind all of this. But Connie has been calling our parents, trying to convince them to talk to the mother who backed out and get her to come back on board. Her friends are also quite angry with her because they can't believe she hid something like this from them. Apparently, she's back with Simon, but she lied about his identity so no one would recognize him. Even our parents are pretty upset with her over this. In short, she's in big trouble because literally everyone in her life is mad at her. I really want to enjoy this, but for some reason I just can't. I know this business meant a lot to her, and now I'm wondering if I was a bit petty and if what I did was wrong. I overheard our parents discussing earlier how disappointed they were. They're even considering pulling out as investors in her business because she betrayed their trust. This is a big deal because they almost never take her side, so this is completely new. And, I don't know. It doesn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. Am I to blame for hurting my sister by getting a potential investor to back out of her business just because she used to bully me as a kid? Update 1. Thanks to everyone who took the time to respond to my post with their advice. I guess you're right. Maybe I have too much of a conscience to enjoy this situation fully. For now, I'm doing the right thing and keeping my mouth shut about what I did. If my parents ever find out that I was behind all of this, they'd literally kick me out of the house. Since I'll be turning 18 in a couple of months, nothing would stop them from doing so. I'm relying on them to pay for my college expenses, so I really can't let that happen. It's been a week since I made my post, and things have gotten much worse for Connie. The mother who pulled out of the deal convinced her daughter to do the same, so now it's just the two of them left. However, her other friend is furious with her and is demanding a 60-40 split of the business shares because her trust in Connie has completely crumbled. This all happened after finding out about Connie's secret boyfriend, Simon, the guy who stole from her father's company for them. Connie had introduced Simon as someone she met on a dating app a couple of months ago and claimed to have been with ever since. But after her friend's mom exposed the truth, Connie tried sticking to that story, though no one believed her anymore. She even went so far as to claim the pictures were fake, saying someone must have edited them to make her look like a liar. She's been visiting our parents almost every day, and they've been scolding her constantly about what she did. At the same time, they're trying to help her. Every afternoon, the three of them meet with their lawyer to find a way to ensure she doesn't lose her shares in the business entirely. There's a strong chance they might have to shut down the business altogether if this conflict isn't resolved soon. I'm not sure how I'll feel if that happens, but honestly, I've decided not to think about it anymore. The one good thing that has come out of this situation is that with Connie being in so much trouble, no one is paying attention to me. I can come and go as I please and literally do whatever I want. It's been freeing. Even when Connie visits, she completely ignores me because she's so preoccupied with her own mess. My parents don't bother me either. This is how I've been spending my last few weeks at home before heading off to college, and so far it's been great. I don't have to answer to anyone about what I do during the day. Honestly, I feel like I could disappear for a couple of days and spend more time at my friends' houses, and neither my parents nor Connie would even notice. As I said, this is the one good thing to come out of this entire situation, and I'm hoping they leave me alone until I'm finally ready to leave for college. I'm also crossing my fingers that this whole ordeal doesn't affect my parents' decision to pay for my college expenses, something I hadn't really considered until now. Writing this post made me realize that if it does, I'll be in trouble. At least I'll have the small satisfaction of knowing that Connie is going through something worse than I am. Update 2. It's been almost 2 weeks since my original post, and up until last week, nothing had really happened to involve me. I thought I was safe, but now I don't think so anymore. A couple of days ago, I guess the woman I called finally caved under the pressure and told Connie how she found out about Simon's past connection. She didn't share all the details, but simply mentioned that she received an anonymous phone call and some photos. That's how she uncovered the truth. Connie didn't even bother denying that she knew and had been with him. She didn't break up with him either because, at this point, no one's really stupid anymore. Everyone has figured out that she didn't meet him on any dating app and that the photos were, in fact, real. Once Connie learned about the anonymous phone call, she immediately suspected me. Yesterday, when she came over to visit, I had the misfortune of being downstairs since I was about to head out to meet a friend. As soon as she saw me, she stormed in and shoved me as hard as she could. I lost my balance and my temper, so I pushed her back. She grabbed my hair and started screaming in my face, accusing me of making that phone call and vowing to make me pay for it. I panicked, but I couldn't let it show on my face because that might have given her the truth. I clung to my story and started shouting back, saying it wasn't me. I claimed I wouldn't even know who to contact, since I'd only met her friend's parents once when they all came over for lunch a few weeks before opening the store. Of course I lied, but I tried to make it sound as believable as possible. After a few seconds of us screaming at each other, our parents stepped in and finally separated us. But then Connie said she didn't believe a word I was saying and demanded to check my phone and laptop along with my parents. I had mentally prepared for this possibility, so I made a big show of objecting to the idea, knowing it would look suspicious if I didn't. Still, I had nothing to worry about. I'd already wiped all my devices clean of any evidence that could connect me to that anonymous phone call. Plus, Connie wrongly assumed I'd use my phone number to make the call, not the Facebook account I'd created specifically to contact her friend's mom, which I later deleted. She was completely off base from the start. Even when she and my parents went through all my accounts on different social media platforms, they found nothing. When Connie came up empty-handed, she completely lost it and started yelling at me, accusing me of wiping my devices on purpose because I was guilty. I fought back, telling her she'd lost her mind because she was about to lose her business and had no right to take it out on me. Things finally calmed down a bit when she started crying. I thought I was in the clear until my parents pulled me aside for a conversation. They told me that, while they couldn't find any proof I was the one who leaked the information, they believed Connie because she seemed so certain. They added that no one else could have known about Simon's connection to her. Even though some people at the party saw Simon, they hadn't recognized him, so it couldn't have been them. That left me. They pointed out how Connie had sent those photos with Simon in the background just to provoke me, so it was obvious I might want revenge. Then, the thing I feared most happened. They told me that even though they couldn't prove it, they knew it was me. As punishment, they were canceling their plans to pay for my college expenses. I was on my own, and they didn't want to hear another word about it. I broke down. I yelled, cried, and begged for almost half an hour, but they wouldn't budge. Finally, I retreated to my room, locked myself in, and started writing this update to distract myself. I still have the sapphire ring my grandmother left me, and I'm considering selling it. But I'm not sure it'll cover all 3 years of college expenses. I might need to take out a student loan and find someone in my family to co-sign. With only a few weeks left before the payment deadline, I can't afford to wait. Even if the ring can cover the first semester, I'll eventually need another solution. For now, I'm scrambling to come up with something. Update 3. A lot has happened since my last update. It's been a month since I last posted, so let me start with what happened a few days after my previous update. I left my parents' house because they were no longer paying for my college tuition. A close friend of mine and I had already talked about this possibility, and her family welcomed me with open arms. She's taking a gap year, and after a few days, she and her parents offered to use her college fund to pay for my initial tuition fees since she wasn't planning to go to college yet. At first, I tried to refuse, but they insisted. They've known me for a long time and treated me like family. Given my situation, I accepted their generous offer. Even though they don't expect me to pay them back, I'm determined to return the money someday. I'm currently on campus and didn't have to sell my grandmother's sapphire ring, something I'm incredibly grateful for. As for Connie, things didn't end well for her. She ended up selling all her shares in the business, and now her former friends completely own the store. Connie had to cut her losses and walk away because it became clear that no one could trust her anymore. Unfortunately, my parents couldn't do anything to help her since it was entirely out of their control. She's probably upset since the business was her idea in the first place. But I suppose she should feel relieved because, from what I've heard, I don't think the store will be successful in the long run anyway. That's no longer my concern, though, as I've completely cut ties with them. Now, I'm focusing on my future. Update 4. Months have passed since my last update, and I have to say that everything has been going pretty well for me. I'm continuing my studies and even managed to find a job that allows me to pay for my education. That's great because my friend's parents only covered the initial tuition fees, and now I'm handling the rest. I've also started repaying the money they lent me. Life at university is good, especially because I'm far away from my parents and sister. A few weeks ago, I officially blocked them out of my life. The final straw came when they reached out to me, not to reconcile, but to ask about the sapphire ring. Apparently, someone found this post and showed it to them, so now they know its value. They demanded I give it to them so they could sell it and recover the money they lost in Connie's failed business, money they claim was lost because of me. I laughed on the phone and told them I wouldn't do anything of the sort. I reminded them that I didn't owe them anything anymore. They don't support me, and I'm completely independent. Then I hung up and blocked them everywhere. It felt amazing to stand up for myself and finally cut that toxic tie. It's like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders after all these years. I'm not sure if I'll leave these posts up or eventually delete them. I don't want my parents or sister to find out more about my life. Maybe I'll create a new account to talk about other things, but one they won't have access to. For now, I'll leave this post up for a few days so you can read it. Thanks for being part of this journey.